Billboards in Hungary. The manliest thing. Fatherhood. A child is a blessing. Billboards in the USA. Stop having kids. Paid for by stophavingkids.org. Sample size of 1, let's be fair, but this sign in Hungary does not appear to be advertising anything. Is it paid for by the Hungarian government? In which case, not a bad idea, but I'm aware that Hungary is not exactly a liberty-oriented paradise. Perhaps still better for liberty than all the countries that claim to be liberty-oriented paradises, or at least free countries, quote-unquote. But little bit more authoritarian than the model we would advocate for, most likely. The model I would, anyway. Yeah, the get sterilized thing in London. Yeah, I remember seeing that. And funnily enough, only white people on the billboard. Yeah. All right, most of you say let's go and make fun of them. So stop having kids. Oh, chat, are you proud of me? I can type with 2 hands, like barely with this one, but I only really need 1 finger to go some other way. Okay, what is this picture? This is not even AI art. This is a collage. Can someone explain this picture to me? This is really bad. I can't even open it as an image. I've done something to the page.
Graphic design is my passion.
Yeah, it looks like it is. See if I can get the image on its own. They've done something really odd with this image, though. Open like a new tab. Right, there's the image. I'll send that to you guys. Can someone figure out what the f happened in this image? It looks like a Photoshop collage, but then run through like a painted filter. Very, very strange. Right. They say, we want a future where creating biological children is no longer an expectation, a norm, a perceived default, or something most people casually do without putting substantial thought and investigation into. We want a future where those who have the desire and means to care for others than themselves decide to prioritize taking care of and supporting deprived humans and other animals who already exist. We want a future where those who choose to live a child-free lifestyle are able to easily do so and are not stigmatized, attacked, or questioned for their morally neutral choice to not create new humans. So, a few things. Firstly, I am not aware, at the moment, of any sort of significant tendency towards people who choose not to have children being stigmatized. Perhaps there should be, but right now there isn't, so I'm not sure what they're fighting for in that regard. In terms of
these people's ideas of stigmatization is, yeah, my grandma asks me at the family barbecue when I'm having kids. Indeed. Like, that's it.
Yeah. The substantial thought and investigation into for having a child, they don't mean that. What they mean is, as per according to our doctrine. They don't just mean investigate on your own terms or think about it substantially. They mean to the extent that we would agree with you. Put that out there. And the rest of this can be answered by, well, evolution. We don't like, any given person's offspring is not identical to any other given person's offspring. And if one lineage survives to the point that 2 people come together and want to have a family, it validates that genetic line all the way back and 1 step forward. So you don't just say, well, I'm going to validate this genetic line over here, which already failed to look after their children, assuming it's an orphan. Of course, I'm not saying don't look after orphans, just don't forego having your own children just because other children already exist. It does suck for them, obviously, but that shouldn't preclude you validating your own genetic lineage and having your own children. It's better for the human race if people that are successfully capable of running their own family do so. Still don't know what the hell's going on with this image. There's another one here. An advert, stop having kids billboard. The only kind choice in a cruel world to stop having... See, one of the first arguments I ever really had on politics back in about 2015, 2016 was with this anti-natalist guy, really depressed, kind of nihilistic. And he would make the anti-natalist argument, and my position was, yeah, there isn't actually a strong case against this. It is personal choice. It's better for the species, obviously, for people who are like capable to have children. But on an individual level, there's no argument against it. No, you do as you like. He wasn't saying people should be killed. He wasn't saying people should be prevented from having children. He was just saying he thinks people should not want to. That they should stop, that because the world is cruel, bringing humans into it is itself cruel. And the response is, I mean, that's fine. I disagree. I'm not going to do that. And I don't want it to ever be enforced. Perhaps it's simply a matter of a negative versus a positive outlook. I view human life in the universe as, yes, full of hardship, but ultimately on a path which contains many good moments, which are worth the hardship. Plus, inevitable. Life in the universe would just happen again, even if human life ended. It's just the next step on the line of what the universe seems to do on its own. I'm not sure exactly how I can sort of word what the universe is doing, quote unquote, but it filters towards, organizing quarks into atoms, atoms into elements, elements into stars, stars into gas clouds into planets and more stars, solar systems, ecosystems, life, etc., etc. It follows this pattern fairly, as far as we can tell, fairly reliably. Though only one example of life's been found so far, we know how many planets there are in the galaxy, so chances are there's quite a lot more of it. So this is just what happens. There's no getting away from it. This is what the universe does. We can try and make it better. We can try and be smarter with how we operate within it. But ultimately, it is completely normal and inevitable. So trying to stop it altogether is a stupid idea. So these guys, however, don't appear to be asking for voluntary human extinction. They appear to be asking for a sort of reduction in the excessive or frivolous multiplication of people. And there is something to be said about that, but obviously the way they're asking to do it is to sort of prevent individuals from doing this, or not prevent, but to try and convince them not to. And that, unfortunately, is probably going to be worse for them. And we haven't even got to the question yet of whether this is targeted against any particular groups. If it indeed is, God, that image is so weird. If it indeed is targeted against a certain group, then their arguments kind of go out the window, because then at that point it's just a very soft genocide attempt. So we'll investigate that. Don't get me wrong, we'll get to that. So essentially, it's as I said, with that guy back then, there wasn't a strong argument to say, like, you're just wrong. It's someone's choice, and you can't really philosophically say that human life is inherently necessary or morally right to exist. It is a moral neutral on the level of the universe. It just is. It probably is inevitable, but it's not necessarily morally right that humans exist. You can't really make the argument from the universe's perspective. However, you can make the argument from a human's perspective. You can make the argument from a human's perspective that their own family should exist, or that they should have the right to have one. They say, where is the harm, unfairness, or deprivation in never existing? Well, it's not necessarily about the creature who may or may not exist. It's also about the people who would value them existing. Depriving yourself of having or raising a family is not good. Every successful human, every human that has ever reached their biological zenith has had a family. Every single one, at least, has had a biological offspring, even if not a real family. But the most successful ones have had actual families. They would tend to have done. So it's not just for the offspring's sake; it's also for the people themselves' sake. And it's not like having children is just something where two people come together, bump uglies, and then leave, and a child happens. That does happen, but viewed more positively, it's the greatest journey two people can take in their lives. It's the culmination of life itself. So when you say technically the child doesn't suffer if they don't exist. You're missing the point by a country mile. Never mind the fact that you can make a sort of an ethical argument that non-existence is an ethical violation. If the child would have existed, and then you do something to prevent them from existing, then the child never existed to be concerned. But there is still an ethical concern there, I think. It's not easy to assess. But if you were to analyze a world in which you hadn't done that versus one in which you had, and in the one in which you let the child exist, ask them, would you be okay not existing? They probably would say no. So in that sense, you could argue, and that is one of the many ways that you could assess ethics, you could argue that it is actually unethical to prevent someone from existing. So that would be my answer. It's not too difficult to find ways to answer this. See what else they say. They say people often do not stop to question having children before opting to procreate. Now, there's truth to that, obviously. You get situations where people get accidentally or unintentionally pregnant, even with people that they shouldn't have tried to start a family with. Now, you can argue contraception is an answer to this, but that also makes it a lot more possible for people to sort of ruin themselves psychologically by having way too much frivolous sex. However, what we're talking about here is basically the norm of human life. What you have with contraception is that frivolous sex will happen more often, but it sort of just always levelizes, I guess, or like gets to the equilibrium of, yes, there will always be some people, some large number of people who have children without intending to, and sometimes that'll be better for them, but not usually it'll be an impediment, a massive change in their life. But then you still have those that deliberately do it. And they are the ones you're talking about here. That's fine. What you're arguing for here, right here in this comment, is conservative values, which doesn't seem to be what the rest of what you're arguing for is about, to be honest. It just says you've made a decision that has caused a life to not live, therefore have sex or you are a murderer. I can get behind this logic. Yeah, but there's degrees. If you decide not to go on a first date with someone who would have eventually been your wife, that's a bit more distant and hard to perceive. However, if you decide to abandon your wife when she says she wants children, you could make an ethical argument there that you could have had kids. You could have brought life into the world, and would they not prefer to live than fail to live? It's a sort of a distant ethical argument. It's kind of difficult to make that because they don't exist versus they could exist. It's difficult to make, but there is something to that. They say we want to change that by ensuring people consider the option of not reproducing as a valid, rational, responsible, and ethical lifestyle. I mean, chat, press 1 if there are some people who you think should consider not reproducing as a valid lifestyle. And press 1 again if you suspect that you would disagree with stophavingkids.org about who those people are. Yeah, I think that's possibly where this is going to end up. Let's keep reading, though. I'm not sure. More really concerning artwork. Again, Motch, you're an art person. Does this not look like some sort of like bad collage? I really hate this art style. What do you think?
It's very sort of local newspaper headline image thrown together in about 3 seconds in Photoshop.
To me,
it looks like they maybe paid for a stock photo, but not enough to get a good one, and then they just worked with it. It looks like it's been thrown through like the default PowerPoint image filters, you know?
Yeah. Do you have any more burns?
No, go ahead.
Thank you. To me, it looks like someone sat down and thought, this is my style. Like that they're a professional artist. But what they're really doing is taking disparate pieces of, as you said, probably stock images and just like smashing them together, and they don't fit well. But they think of it as a style.
See, this is about the amount of effort that I put into for like the Mulberry Wizard posting thumbnails, except I make 3 of them a day on average. And this is like a professional website. Yeah,
it is, isn't it? There's more as well. What's this? Well, that's just a bad drawing. They say there is an unconscionable amount of needless suffering, injustice, and death in the world. Birth serves as the catalyst for it all. Alternative perspective. Don't make it about suffering, make it about striving. Who is going to overcome the suffering inherent to being life in the universe without our offspring? Because if we delete humanity, someone else is just going to come along and do the same thing. It has to be overcome at some point. Why not do it ourselves? Why not take up that courageous task? And our children will not only suffer, they will also hopefully enjoy the journey of having children of their own. It's like we're on a great ship crossing the ocean, and the seas are often stormy. But we greatly enjoy the company of those on the ship with us, and we know that one day we will reach a glorious further on point. And we keep seeing like beautiful sights in these sort of islands that we pass, and we occasionally go out to the island and fetch natural resources, and maybe sometimes there's something totally new we haven't seen before and extraordinary, and we all enjoy it together. Sure, sometimes we argue on the ship, but generally there's good to be seen as well. It's camaraderie. And then someone comes along and says, we should just sink the ship. We should just stop, sink the ship. I mean, why does it matter? It's like, you're missing the point. Your life. Life is always going to continue on its own terms. And at the point where life decides not to continue, well, that life simply wasn't good enough, and some other life will do it instead. This is just what life does. They say, we aren't directly stopping people in any way from having kids. We believe that all humans should voluntarily stop creating more humans, not that all humans should be forced to stop creating more humans. We advocate for abstaining from procreation as much as possible and opting to take care of those we already have. We seek to normalize not having kids by respectful means that honor bodily autonomy and individuality. Chat, press 1 if people should generally abstain from procreation until such a time as they are ready and like with someone suitable to have a family with. Because that's just traditional family values. That's just sort of Christian moral standards even. I'm not sure if here they are arguing for what they really think they are, or perhaps they are. Perhaps they are conservative, but it doesn't seem like it. Fields, what annoys me the most about these people is none of them will just have the courage of their convictions and just kill themselves. They would argue that they would not ask anyone to kill. Like, they're not for suffering. They're just for not creating more people. So they would argue that they would want to live their full life for themselves because they want to live it, because they recognize they're humans, they want to live it, and then die a natural death without having created any more humans. Because the fundamental difference is they view life as primarily suffering. Or they view the suffering of life as so much more important than the positives that they think it shouldn't exist. They think you can't justify it existing because of the suffering. I suppose one response to that is that suffering is not actually the metric by which we should be counting this. It's not actually a very valid metric on this level at all, because we're no longer talking about like individual morality. We're talking about like entire population-wide morality. And ending a population or letting a population end is unethical to the population itself, even if none of the individuals would care in this hypothetical. And the suffering of individuals is not something that the population considers in terms of evolutionary, because a lot of that suffering is completely necessary to progress as a species. There's lots of ways to address this. Granted, though, what they have here is philosophically an argument that is not easily assailable. However, it's also, they probably think they have an easy argument here, but no one's ever going to actually follow it. Basically, what they have here is a response which, if followed to its natural conclusion, would result in the complete annihilation of existence. It is actually a bit like critical theory, where if you can find something morally wrong with something, by some interpretation, then you can just argue it should not exist. That is where this ultimately comes from. That they find something wrong with life, and granted, there is suffering in life, and so they say it shouldn't exist. Well, at that point, you're really calling for the complete destruction of all existence. Okay, if you assume that existence is always going to exist, then the rest of your argument does kind of come down with it. Again, not strongly, but effectively. Ginger says, personally, my plan is to have a house and then seek a family. I'm not particularly interested in having a partner or wife and kids before I have a safe place to nurture said family. Fair enough. But you may be surprised by who you meet. So don't be afraid to change your plan if you meet the right person. Dekra says, quickest way for them to end the suffering closest to them would be to avail themselves of Canadian healthcare. Yeah. That would be up to them if they wanted to euthanize themselves or to commit suicide. But again, as I say, they're not actually for death. They're just for the prevention of new life. To be fair to them, it's not as bad as Sue implying. But yes, I get what you're saying. Ginger says, you know what they say, no plan survives contact with the enemy. Quite so. Quite so. What's the... It's the Major from Fawlty Towers, isn't it? Who called women the enemy in some context. It's something like that. It just reminded me of that, Ginger. They say your imaginary potential future offspring can't miss out on the desirable aspects of existence. And again, like this is a somewhat challenging philosophical discussion, because I think that there is some justification to the notion that a potential human should have a hypothetical say morally or ethically in whether they could exist or not. That you can analyze ethics in a way that pits the potential future versus the current actual future. But as I also said earlier, everyone around the new human benefits from them being there. In a healthy society, I don't even think suffering is primary over happiness. But again, suffering and happiness aren't really the metrics by which you determine whether a life is good. It's like hot and cold. They're just regulators for where you should move. The thing that you should use to measure a valid, like a good life, is meaningfulness and long-term fulfillment. Those come from, guess what? For most people, having a healthy family. Yeah, Dekra, it is. Like, I haven't heard it worded that way before, but that's a good point. That their entire morality here is based on the notion of just avoiding pain, which is a very shallow lens through which to view morality. And if you were to use that as your only moral guide, probably some very abhorrent things would become normal. They say we can choose to end the cycle of needless suffering and help those who already exist. That's it. It's not just white people advocating for this or it being advocated towards whites, as I assumed it might be. Parenthood regret is a silent epidemic, it said. I'm sure that happens. But the thing is that those children of the regretful parents are less likely to grow up to be well-adjusted and so less likely to have kids of their own, so it naturally filters out evolutionarily. Now, you may say, well, why hasn't that happened yet over all these generations? Because it's difficult to get that right, and evolution is constantly allowing it to happen to some extent because it also creates more unexpected results, which evolutionarily we need. So it can continue to happen, but at the same time, it's how would I put it exactly? It is also the minority, I expect. I mean, the correct solution of that is just for society to be healthier to the point that people who become parents don't regret it. There's no shortage of already existing humans and other living beings in need of rescue, stability, safe and loving homes, and many other forms of support, they say. Let's minimize our harm and maximize our goodwill and solidarity with living beings and the planet, they say. I mean, you could do both, incidentally. But as I said, if they're not surviving on their own, evolution is telling you that, however harsh it sounds, evolution is telling you that they are not as successful as they could be. And your own offspring are more likely to be. Solidarity with communist co-workers. See, I've made that argument before, Melchizedek. It isn't exclusively used by communists. It's sometimes used by normal human beings as well, but it is very often used by communists, yes. And the antinatalist thing is, it's not always, but more often I've seen it associated with leftism, probably because it's quite nihilistic. anti-force, unapologetically anti-natalist, they say. More of this terrible artwork. Less reckless and selfish, consider future problems, be fruitful and multiply. Learn why the Bible doesn't require followers to proliferate the human species. Interesting. Not sure about that one. Having children isn't the gateway to increased happiness, they say. Well, I think quite often it is. They've got an image here of two parents being miserable trying to deal with their child, and then two childless chads over here having a happy time. Yeah, that'll happen. But again, suffering is not the metric by which we measure success or value of life. These parents on the left here are going through this suffering and becoming stronger as a result. They are more useful to the species. Childbirth and trauma are commonplace to this day. Yes, but again, trauma obviously isn't good, but it's relatively rare and could be made rarer, but also it's a way of adapting the species in unexpected ways, because otherwise we end up stuck in a local maximum, or local whatever. They say, your future child will save the world, ? Learn why we disagree with these delusions of grandeur. You'll notice, chat, that I did not need to make the argument that your child will save the world in order to defend natalism. But it's always possible they'll do something essential, and they'll do something which ultimately changes the world. It's possible. It's not that likely, but it's possible. I am tired of these anti-natalist arguments. God, it's the same art style. It's really bad, dude. All right, let's have a quick look at their like about section or like their who are we section. Who leads this organization? They say all artwork on the website is created by actual humans and not artificial intelligence. I'd rather it was artificial intelligence because it's really bad. Yeah, they haven't put their name onto this at any point. So this is from a couple of years ago, actually, this post. Who's behind the Portland billboards demanding people stop having kids? Even in a city accustomed to freewheeling messages, calls for a human breeding ban are unusual. Granted, they're not necessarily asking for a ban. Then again, if someone offered one to them, maybe they would accept it. 2 billboards arose in the city. Northeast Killingsworth, little-known organization called Stop Having Kids. Same advocacy which got its start in Portland, not surprising. According to a spokeswoman, put up a 3rd billboard along Interstate 5 near Salem. All humans wish they had ever been born. Not actually that many, I don't think. And even those that do are usually just saying it for attention when given the chance would not do anything about it. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. Okay, figured out who's behind it. Billboards are not somebody's idea of a sick joke. No, they're serious. Stop Having Kids spokeswoman Ashley Riddle says the group started informally in Portland a few months before 2021 and identifies itself as a collective liberation movement. The word collective there implies socialist. Its website makes the group's platform clear, anti-natalist, etc., etc. Lamar Advertising owns the billboards, part of the company's portfolio. Richard Smith, Lamar's Portland manager, says headquarters reviews prospective advertisers. Selling contract period contract, how much the group is paying. $800 and $1,200 a month. Riddle says money for the billboards came from an anonymous donor, and actually getting them up was a long process. Anonymous donor, eh? It's interesting. She declined to identify the founder of Stop Having Kids by his full name, saying she knows him only as Deets. Give us the Deets. Now, chat, have you noticed something that I've noticed about the nickname that the founder of Stop Having Kids chose? State records show, however, that Stop Having Kids was incorporated in January 2021 by Eric Goldberg, a Portland photographer whose middle name is Deets. Riddle says Deets creates almost all the content on the organization's website, most of the information. Chat, I was joking. I was joking. But it happened. It happened. Goldberg doesn't respond to this website's request for comment. Information about Goldberg isn't readily available. The owner of StopHavingKids.org is cloaked by an internet proxy, and the website itself lists no staff or contact information aside from the email address info@StopHavingKids. Goldberg's activism apparently isn't reserved for antinatalism. 2020 reports... Hold on. Veganism. It links antinatalism to veganism. What a surprise. 2020 news reports from Minnesota say an Oregonian named Eric Goldberg, the same age as the Stop Having Kids founder, used a $1,900 drone to surveil a chicken farming operation when a truck driver for the chicken processing plant blasted the drone from the sky with his shotgun. The shooter was arrested. Not sure that's right. In addition to billboards on its website, Stop Having Kids does advocacy work through sidewalk demonstrations that Riddle calls street outreach. A small group stations itself on a sidewalk with signs that say things that normalize antinatalism. Goal of street outreach to have as many conversations as possible. Spot confrontation. Bike rides and not down with eugenics. The unseen camera operated records the interaction response. Where do you see anything about eugenics? The biker says, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. To this, the recorder says, that has nothing to do with eugenics. We are totally against human procreation all across the board. Yeah. But is this organization in any other countries? Or is it just in the US? Portland clip isn't the only time the group's messaging has been likened to eugenics. A woman, after filming and yelling at demonstrators, says, I don't like who pretend to help others and try to make minorities not have children. I'm not sure if that's their goal, to be honest. Don't get me wrong. I expect that a lot of their members are genuine antinatalists who aren't targeting any particular race. But the mysterious leader with the funny name? I don't know. Stop Having Kids raises money through donations and merchandise sales. Every month, a portion of proceeds go to a different organization. Sending its money to React-19, an organization working to increase our understanding of the role of COVID-19 in those who experience systemic and prolonged symptoms after acute infection or after vaccination. What does that have to do with your goals? US Senator Ron Johnson, one of the most ardent anti-vaxxers in Congress, says this website, hosted an expert panel on vaccine dangers in November, including a React-19 co-founder as one of his experts. Interesting. React-19 did not respond to a request for comment. Riddle says she's unaware of any particular reason Stop Having Kids chose to support React-19. It's just whatever pops up on Dietz's radar. Interesting. Some going on here. This is a strange rabbit hole of an organization, but I will say I think finding out that the guy that runs it is literally called Eric Goldberg. I was joking. I was not expecting it to be that clear cut that he was in fact Jewish. Unity Vegan Kitchen, a photo by Eric Dietz Goldberg. Unity Vegan Kitchen, great photo by Eric Dietz Goldberg of Unity's crab cakes, which are made with local The Hearty Vegan Tempeh. And this is 2014. So yeah, the veganism stuff as well. Yeah, so there you go. I think this will do. It's building to a Dietz nuts joke. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, the order is not what I thought it was earlier. Anyway, I think it's time to move on.